I don't know. Good evening and welcome to the June 11, 2014 meeting of the Edina Planning Commission. Jackie, could you call a roll?
Here. 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 Here.
Here. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of the meeting agenda for this evening. Are there any suggested modifications to this evening's agenda? Seeing none, I would take a motion to approve the meeting agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion passes. Next up is approval of the consent agenda. There is only one item on the consent agenda for this evening, and that is the minutes of the regular meeting of May 28, 2014. Are there any suggested revisions or modifications to the minutes from May 28th? Seeing none, I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Sit.
It has been moved and seconded. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. The motion passes. Next up on the agenda is community comment. This is the portion of the meeting where we invite members of the community to come forward and speak on issues that are not on this evening's agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and address the commission? Seeing none, I'd take a motion to close community comment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. All right, then we have three public hearings on the agenda this evening, and the first is a variance for 5501 France Avenue in Edina. You'll notice how I deftly avoided saying your name. Thank you. Chris, you're going to introduce this for us? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission, the variance in front of you this evening, actually there are three variances relating to the project.
Yeah, we're not hearing you.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay. The property is located at 5501 France Avenue South. You may be familiar with it. It is in the southeast corner of West 55th Street and France Avenue. This is a photograph of the France Avenue elevation of the house. It actually was a Baptist church when it was originally built in 1928. It's no longer a church. It's been a residence for many years. This is another photograph along France Avenue, and then this is a north elevation of the existing home. The homeowners would like to add a garage. There's never been a garage on this property after all these years, and the years that I've worked at City Hall. Anybody that's owned the property has come in and attempted to try to figure out how to put a garage on the property. It's been a challenge. The lot is almost a perfect square. It's a corner lot. You have deeper setbacks along France Avenue and also the front yard setback along West 55th Street. And you're limited where you can put a curb cut. You're not allowed to put a curb cut along France Avenue because it's a county road. So there's been some real challenges with trying to improve the property. This is the house that's adjacent directly to the east, and it fronts West 55th Street, so it is actually setting up the required front yard setback along 55th Street for the subject property. This is the other adjacent property, which is actually to the south. It's a double unit that is fronting along Ewing Avenue with their backyard backing up to France Avenue. So it's their side yard that is adjacent to the subject property's rear yard. This is a recent survey of the property, and the area that's cross-hatched is the existing house, and you can see on the west side is where they would like to build a garage and then fill out an area to be in line with the existing setback along West 55th Street that would be their small front entrance and then a dinette area. Currently, the house has attic space on the second floor. What they would like to do is put a second floor above that, which actually then requires a setback from the rear lot line because they're currently at 14.7 feet. The rear setback is 25 feet, so in order to add additional space above, they would need a variance from rear yard setback. They require a variance from side street setback for the garage sidewall. What they're proposing is a 13.7-foot setback. The requirement is 15 feet. And then for front yard setback or street setback along West 55th Street, that's dictated by the house to the east, which is a little bit further back, so they do need a setback variance from that. But in terms of adding on, the only setback that is going to be a new setback or a closer setback would be the 13.7-foot setback to France Avenue, which should be 15 feet. It's a very minor variance, given the fact that the house is already non-conforming. This is the proposed first floor with the garage on the west side. And then on the second floor, they would have a full second floor with 3 bedrooms, bathroom, and a screened porch above the garage. This is the new front elevation. They're going to change the front of the house to face north. So the rear elevation then to the south, and you can see this would be then the new side elevation along France Avenue where they would have the porch above the garage. So this is the west side elevation that would now be facing France. And the east side elevation, which doesn't change too dramatically with the exception of the second floor above. So the primary issue is, are the variances reasonable for the sites? Staff believes the proposal is reasonable. The proposed use is permitted in the R1 zoning district. They aren't going to be changing any non-conforming setbacks with the exception of the one towards France Avenue, and that is a rather minor variance in order to accomplish a minimum 2-car garage, which is required by the zoning ordinance. The additions will simply match those existing non-conforming setbacks. The improvements will provide a reasonable use of a small lot that is heavily impacted given the current front and rear setback requirements and setback required from France Avenue. I don't know if you could come up with a better plan for this lot. It's been a challenge for most of the residents that have owned it. With that, I will stop and answer any questions you may have.
Questions from Ms. Acker? Commissioner Carr.
On the France Avenue side, is there a sidewalk along there?
No, I don't believe so.
No. So I'm assuming, though, that there's still, if the city had decided to put a sidewalk along that side of France Avenue, there's still room to do so?
Yes, there's still boulevard area where they could do that, yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lee.
I just want to be clear. Is this a complete tear down? What part of the existing foundation is remaining, if any?
I did ask that question because we do have a requirement that if you remove more than 50% of the exterior wall area, not including the roof, then it's considered all new construction. And they plan on leaving that first floor, so it's not considered new construction. It's just an addition of a second floor and then also the garage.
So the garage is just slab on grade. There's not any additional foundation below
Correct.
that.
Chris, if you could put up the, well, there's the survey. So I'm looking at page 3 of your report, and on the compliance table, you've identified 3 variances. I'm just not understanding the 43.8. You follow where I'm at?
I do.
Okay. Because the front yard, so the front yard would be 55th Street, right?
Correct. That's a misprint. I have no idea. It should be 5
And
feet.
33.1
and a 1.3 and a 10.3, so it's a 5 foot.
So they're
It should be 5 feet, not 43.8 for the front yard.
I'm sorry. What?
It should be a 5-foot variance from the 33.1 foot, because they're at 28.
So it's 28. It's the 28.1, right?
Right.
Okay. So that 43.8 should be 28.1?
Correct.
Okay. And then The 14.1 for the side yard setback, the survey shows a 14.1, but it also shows a 13.7.
Correct. It should be 13.7.
Is it 13.7? Okay.
Correct.
Just so we've got the number straight. And then the 14.7 is consistent with that rear yard
Yes. If you
measurement.
go to the first page, I apologize for that. Those would have been, it indicates that it's a 5-foot front yard setback, a 1.3-foot side street setback, which matches the 13.7, and then the 10.3-foot rear yard setback, which
Okay.
is per the 25. So the table is incorrect.
So there's three variances. Okay.
Correct. 2 of which are just matching a non-conforming situation. It's just to line it up, but it's greater than the 200 square foot allowable matching setback that we would allow in the ordinance. So the only
So
setback that is new is the one that's along France Avenue.
Right, and the 14.7 isn't any change. It's just that the change to the structure. The 14.7 rear yard setback?
Correct. They're
Because that's the
going up.
existing oh, they're
It is-
going up on that.
They're going
okay.
up, and because you can't, you have
Right.
to address that issue if you change.
Because you're in essence expanding the nonconformity.
Correct.
Okay. Other questions? Commissioner Carr?
I'm just not clear, the entrance to the garage is facing which street?
55th.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Okay. At this point, we'd invite the applicant to come forward and come on up, share tell us a little bit about the project. You know, so if you have something that you want us to see on the overhead, okay, then the side microphones work better than the middle one. So you could do it together, or you could do either side, whatever.
Can you hear me? Is it working?
I can. It's kind of a tag
Just
team.
feel free to correct me when I wear this.
Welcome.
Thank you. Well, I'll start. We moved for the Edina School District, and we were really surprised how many kids our age were in the same block. I'm from Europe. I'm from Yugoslavia, formerly, now from Serbia. And I'm a Minnesotan, thanks to an Eganite. Married a lady from Egan. And so we like the urban part of Edina, and we love the schools. And when we moved into this home, we didn't realize what an inconvenience it would be to not have a garage and what it just doesn't look good. So we decided to ask for a variance for the garage. And we think it will improve not only our house, but it will improve the neighborhood, and which letters do suggest that that's the case. There's not much more to say. Living without a garage in Minnesota is a nightmare. We have no place to store our bikes. We have no place to store our cars. And we tried with the plan to be as considerate for the area as possible. I mean, the garage we took it down from 24 feet to 22 feet, as small as we can get for a two-car garage. It's not as long either, because we're matching the existing structure towards 55th. As far as building up, I don't think we'll be building up very much. We're just turning the roof over so that the face of the house will be on 55th. We use it currently because the driveway is there. We're not moving the driveway closer to 55th. It's wherever it is, towards France. And that's all I can say. Nothing more I can say.
Well, thank you, Mr. Stojmenovic. Questions? I would just say you have a lot of neighbors who are quite fond of you.
Well, thank you.
We're fine with them. We don't get neighbors.
And it sounds like it's a property that has had a lot of challenges over the years, and so...
It was owner-occupied for a long time, but I think it has been very challenging for the last 10 or so years. The family that owned it from the time it was a church until 2005 or something, that was one family. And then after that, it's been a rental property.
Okay.
And I think there have been issues related to that.
And I can certainly understand turning it to face 55th instead of facing France, especially with younger kids, trying to kind of make that the front yard.
Right.
I have a comment.
Commissioner Lee.
First of all, I want to say that it is a very, very nice solution. One of the things that we have reviewed with this commission, and I haven't even been on the commission that long, is this idea of expanding a house and taking what's essentially a one-story or 1.5-story structure, and in order to gain space, everybody wants to build on that full second story. We don't have a lot of power sometimes because some of these things actually meet all the regulations as far as dictating any kind of design. But I think this is a perfect example about what I talk about massing. This owner could have chosen to take this structure 2 stories all the way across, even over the garage. And you notice that the architect chose to leave it short, or I'd say 1 story. That's the kind of treatment that makes an acknowledgement to the area's 1 and 1.5-story structures. It is a way of pulling back from the street some of that wall that tends to form the minute you go to a 2-story structure. So I thought it was very ingenious, too, that obviously it makes sense to put the driveway now, flip it over on the other street. And it made a good use of the lot. And I have to say the detailing really is very, very nice. So kudos to you for getting an architect involved and having a nice treatment to it.
Thank you.
It's very, very nice.
And yet
well
we
done.
do, the property, I don't know if it was clear earlier when it was kind of brought up, but when we build the garage, we are going to be digging that partially underground because it's currently a 1.5-story property. So.
Well, not really underground. We're just going maybe a foot.
Well, yeah, but
So you'll be
somewhat, so it's going to be
driving
coming
lower as you
down
enter.
into
Yeah.
right.
We're not driving lower into the garage. It will still be sloping down towards 55th.
Yeah.
But it's just not going to be exactly even with the house,
Right,
according
right.
to the architect.
Yep.
Because then it's too high to the house.
Yep.
All right, any other questions for the applicants? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
This is a public hearing, so this is the time when we'll open the public hearing and invite anyone in the audience who'd like to comment on this item to come forward. As I wait for the crowds rushing to come to the microphones, I'll note that there were a number of emails and other written comments from neighbors uniformly, I believe, in favor of the project and applauding your efforts to kind of retrofit this property. So now that I've given enough time for everyone to come to the microphones, I see no one coming forward, and I would invite a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. So the public hearing is closed, and commission comment or discussion. Commissioner Scheer.
I, too, like everything about your proposal. I like the 55th facing. I like the design very much, as my fellow commissioner was just observing, and others on the commission know that I'm a fan of garages. I like things neat and tidy and put away, so this makes me happy, and I do appreciate that you're limiting the size of the garage, again, to keep the scale and perspective on the street. So I think it's an excellent proposal.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion on the matter.
I move approval with staff condition.
Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Congratulations. Motion passes. And good luck. It looks like a great project. All right, next item up is variance at 3932 and 3934 West 49th Street in Edina. Chris.
Thank you.
I have these other ones.
This is a variance request for 393234 West 49th Street. It is a double dwelling unit lot. and the variances that are being requested are for lot width and area to rebuild a twin home on a non-conforming lot. Unlike the lots in the R1 district that are exempt from having...
Chris, could I just interrupt you for a minute? Jordan, it may be just my chair isn't getting the microphone,
No.
but I can't, for some reason, I can't hear you.
Can you hear
Or
me now?
it's just
Sorry.
echoing like in
Okay.
a way that I'm not, I don't know that it's not loud enough, but I'm just,
It's not loud, no.
try it again.
Okay, I'll try again. This is a lot width and lot area variance to rebuild a twin home that is on a non-conforming lot currently. The property is located north of West 49th Street, as highlighted. It currently has a rambler with garages underneath behind the home and a garage driveway access to the garage on the west side of the property. Here's a photograph of the existing double that's currently there. The property to the west is a double dwelling unit lot as well. And then the property to the east has been rebuilt upon. That property received similar variances for lot width and area. The R2 requirements are a minimum 15,000 square foot lot and a 90-foot lot width. All of the R2 lots along West 49th Street are non-conforming. So if they take down the current structure in order for them to rebuild on the lot, they would have to get variances from the lot width and area requirements. This is the existing twin home that's there right now, and you'll notice that on the east side, it's a little over 3 feet away from the side lot line, so extremely non-conforming in terms of setback. And then on the west side, it's a little over 13 feet from the side lot line. This is the proposed twin home. The home that is proposed for the property meets all of the setback, coverage, and height requirements. They will be increasing the setback on the east side to over 17 feet, and then on the west side, a little under 17 feet. So the footprint will be narrower than the existing Rambler double that is there right now. Here are the elevations of the proposed twin home, the front, side, and rear elevations. It will be rear loading garages as they exist today. The difference will be is there will be driveways on both sides. I'm sure that will make it easier if they do decide to divide the lot and sell each unit separately. This is the basement or lowest level floor plan, main level, and then the second floor. So the variances that are being requested are lot width variance and lot area variance. The existing lot width is 82 feet. The square footage of the lot is 10,108 square feet. The minimum is 15,000. Is the proposed variance justified? Will it relieve practical difficulties? Staff believes the proposed variance is reasonable given that historically the existing double has been on the lot that is narrower and is less than the required 15,000 square foot and 90 foot in width. It's been there since 1953. It predates our current code in terms of lot configuration for R2 lots. Our code does prohibit if somebody were to take down a double on a single dwelling unit and would like to replace it with a single dwelling unit, they would have to rezone it to R1. They couldn't just simply build one unit instead of two. So to remove this double, you would be required to build a double unit unless you had it rezoned to an R1 district. Staff recommends approval of the variance based on the following findings. With the exception of the variance requested, the proposal would meet all the required standards and ordinances for an R2 double dwelling unit. The proposal would meet the required standards for variance because the proposed use of the property is reasonable as it is consistent with the existing conditions and requirements for the R2 zoning district, and the imposed lot area does not allow redevelopment of the property without the benefit of a variance or zoning change. With that, I will stop and answer any questions you may have.
Questions from Ms. Ocker. Commissioner Carr.
Could you just pull up the diagram again and explain to me again where the variances are visually?
The variance that's required is for lot width. Currently, the lot width is 82 feet. The minimum requirement for an R2 lot is 90. And then it's the square footage of the lot. The minimum square footage required for an R2 lot is 15,000 square feet. And this property is 10,000 plus square feet in area. So it's for area and width. It hasn't, there are no variances required for the structure itself.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Lee.
And this is a complete tear down?
Yes.
Okay, and so obviously, I'm guessing that the foundation, looks to me like the foundation's going as well. It's a brand new
Yes.
foundation.
Everything is,
Okay.
yes.
Commissioner Platter.
Hi, Chris. It's more maybe an administrative question, but I'm looking at the, and it says certificate of survey. I guess this is the plan right here. And it's signed by a surveyor. And I'm guessing this would maybe be the stormwater plan and erosion control plan. Is that what this is meant to be?
This is just a survey for the purposes of the variance.
Okay.
They would have to
The survey
submit-
has new grade lines on it, so I'm trying to understand how the surveyor, I understood from our code that a professional engineer had to sign and do the grading. And this is a surveyor, so maybe you could help me understand where the rest of that would come in. I guess I'm not seeing enough here that they're showing on this plan per our code that would be approvable. It's signed by a surveyor and it's got new grading plans on it. And I understood from our code that had to be signed by a professional engineer.
And they would have to do that at permit application, but for the purposes of a variance application, we don't require that.
Well, variance, we're trying to find where the stormwater goes here too. I mean, and how the grading plan is, and this is not a certified plan or grading plan that's being shown here. Is there one available?
So I don't think this is the survey, this isn't the grading and drainage plan.
Right, this is
The
a
grading and drainage
survey.
plan is what needs to be,
But they've got new grades on here. And they've got
Where?
new survey lines. They've got silt fence lines on here too.
right, but that doesn't mean it's a grading and drainage plan.
Well, how does a surveyor, who isn't a civil engineer, put this plan together and put new grades on here?
Well,
I think part of our
surveys-
discussion on variances is to understand how the site's going to work, and we
I-
don't have correct information.
I'm not quarreling with the need for a grading and drainage plan. I'm just saying that oftentimes the survey doesn't have it's not the grading and drainage plan. And I don't think
They've-
it's the same item that we're,
They do have grades on here, though.
right, but
and
it can have grades on it without being the grading and drainage plan. I mean, I'm not quarreling with the need for a grading and drainage plan for the purposes that you're talking about. We oftentimes get a survey and then we get a separate grading and drainage plan, right?
That's correct.
So
There's not one here, though.
To Commissioner Platter's question, why don't we have a grading and drainage plan?
Was there no grading and drainage plan submitted as part of this application?
Yeah. He just basically uses the same program, and the engineer he was working with, they just traded the file on the computer. So we have one that's signed.
Okay, so just from an organizational perspective, we'll set that a question aside and we'll visit with you about that when we get there. Your point's well taken, Commissioner Platter.
I mean, we're running into huge problems with these, drainage in our city, and there's nothing here for us to review.
And just before I go to you, Commissioner Lee, anything further, Commissioner Platter?
I can ask I'm curious why there's two driveways in here, but we can ask the applicant about that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Lee?
I just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Platter. The confusing part is that typically we look at a survey and it has the existing house on it. This shows the new house, proposed twin home, with the old existing grades. It needs to show how the new grades would change. If this were just showing the old house, that would be fine.
He's got a different survey.
Oh, well,
They look like new grades on there to me.
it's new grades. Yeah, oh.
So you just don't have them, they're just not superimposed, so there's two different surveys. There's an existing on the big set of documents, there's the existing survey, and then there's the second page is,
Yeah, I'm not really asking about the existing survey. I'm concerned about, it says survey, but it shows new work on it. And I don't understand how a survey shows new work.
Yeah, so it's not a question of whether or not there should be a drainage plan. It's not about drainage. It's the survey needs to show how the contours would change.
well, let me ask, let's, just for Carrie or Chris, what do we require?
We do require a grading and drainage plan. So if we don't have one tonight, maybe I'd suggest that we table this and would have to take action at the next meeting if that's not part of the package here.
Okay, I'm inclined to go ahead and, I mean, people have looked at it, and to the extent the applicant's here, I want to talk about it, but I think that's a fair point in terms of not having a complete application. All right, so setting aside the grading and drainage plan for the moment, other questions for Chris? Commissioner Forrest.
Yeah, likewise, it was unclear to me what exactly was going on that was new. Whether or not, are they digging out new for those tuck-under garages? Or I couldn't tell whether the level, because the numbers are the same on both plans. They're, as Commissioner Lee was saying, it doesn't look like the elevation numbers have been updated.
It appears that they're showing in parentheses that would be new grade elevations, and then the ones that have the X next to them are existing.
I think they're fairly identical, actually.
Well, if you go to the existing survey,
Okay.
you'll see that there are some grade elevations around the back that are
So they just kept the old ones on as well?
they have the existing, and the ones in parentheses on the new survey are showing the change. And there's a difference between, looks like towards the back it's at 882.6, and they have in parentheses 882. So towards the entrance of the garage, it does appear that they'd be about the same.
So there currently is a tuck-under garage as well?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I couldn't tell for
yes,
sure.
all of them on that north side have
Okay.
tuck-under garages that are accessed along a driveway towards the backyard.
And I was curious as well about the changes to grade because they're adding looks like they're adding a retaining wall on that east side.
Yes.
Okay.
Carrie, did you want to chime in here?
Give me 1 second.
Okay. Commissioner Platter?
Oh, I just mentioned that retaining wall needs a permit too, right? 4 feet.
Is it more than 4 feet?
Yes, it will need a permit
Okay.
at
Okay.
permitting.
Commissioner Olson?
Well, I was going to bring up some of the comments already made. I guess I'll wait for the applicant, sorry. I don't have any questions for you.
Oh.
Sorry.
Carrie, did you want to?
Yes, as I'm looking at this application, this is for, the variances requested are for the existing lot and not the specifics of the plan. So really what we're weighing in on is are the variances reasonable for the existing lot to build a duplex on this property? And the grading and drainage would be required to be submitted as part of a building permit, and that would have to be done by a licensed engineer. But we, for the purposes of this variance, where we're just reacting to the buildability of this existing R2 property.
But I guess, I mean, I have a little bit of a problem with granting a variance without knowing what's going to go on there.
And that is part of your purview if you'd like to table this and have that information. You certainly can do that.
Well, I've totally lost control of this meeting. Haven't I? Not yet? All right. So, any more questions for Chris? All right. Thank you, Chris. So what I'm going to do is ask the applicant to come forward, and you can tell there's a number of questions. So why don't you come on up, introduce yourself, and let's see if we can't get to the bottom of some of these, issues.
I'm Paul Whiteman with PDW Investments. We build all around the area, Linden Hills, Fulton, Armitage, Edina. And as far as the grading goes, we do have a stormwater plan done by a licensed engineer. I think we have turned it in, but I'll double check that. And if you forgot to sign it or whatever, that's, our problem. We'll get that signed and taken care of right away. But as far as the drainage goes, I think it does nothing but improve the drainage of what's there now, especially having the two driveways on each side. It's going to have somewhat of a retaining wall from the foundation coming down, and then we'll drain them out the back towards the wetland. So it's actually probably going to do nothing but improve the drainage of the current situation now.
Anything else you want to share with us about it before I kind of turn to questions for you?
I don't believe so. The reason for the two driveways is aesthetics, just looking at it from the elevation. We tried several plans where we had 4 cars of garages, for the 2 units. So 2 big double doors, big 2-car driveways going up, and all you could see was driveway and garage. So that's why, and the fact that our maximum square footage on the main level is 1,250 per side. So to get full living space of main level living, and including your garage of 400 and whatever square feet, that only leaves you with about 800 square feet left for living space on the main level, which is why we did the 2 driveways down around to the back. And the tuck under garage is similar to what's there now. That allows us to get some living space above the garages on the main level and make that main level feel nice. And you don't look at the house and see all garage and all driveway. You see a couple of single-car driveways going down the side to the back. I think that's all I got.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Whiteman. Questions for Mr. Whiteman? Commissioner Platter.
Say again why you think you need 2 driveways here. I mean, the existing one today has 1 that goes around, and I'm just concerned about you're paving over everything on this lot here.
It's 2 single-car driveways going around to the back instead of two-car driveways going up to the front.
Yeah, but
like
don't
the other new ones
isn't that big plate in the back where the garages come together down there?
Yep, and that's actually we're making that look like a patio. We're going to use that as a patio. It's going to be a stamped, paver look patio back there. Yes, we're going to use it as a driveway, but that's actually going to be their patio as well.
Okay, I guess I don't understand how I need 2 driveways here. It just takes up so much pervious space. But that's what you want to come in with, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, if we had two-car driveways going up the front plus 2 patios in the back, I think we'd be pretty similar as far as impervious surface.
Well, I'd just say share the driveway and just drive in the back.
Well, we'd like to sell them both as individual units down the road. So I think it's a pretty big deal for a buyer to have their own driveway and not a shared driveway agreement. That would be the reason for that.
We received, one of the written comments that we received noted that there would have to be removal of, 2 trees?
I believe I want to say it's 1 tree on the east. It'd be on the front yard east side.
The comment.
And we're planning on replanting 2 trees in the front yard.
Comment was installing 2 driveways on the site will require the removal of both large front trees on the lot, as well as a line of trees along the east side.
Well, I remember one for sure. As far as a line of trees, maybe like a line of brush or something. I don't think they're real, trees over 2 inches in size. It was more, from what I remember. I don't know if there's a picture.
On page A3, there's a photo that doesn't show the full.
Okay.
Carrie,
all right. Further questions? Commissioner Platter.
So, Carrie, aren't they required to show on the survey plans? I'm assuming this would qualify for a watershed district permit, but don't they need, per that one, don't they need to show all the trees, where they're at, and how they're going to work at them during construction? That's my understanding of those requirements. How
Not
would that?
familiar with the watershed district requirements.
Okay. Where do we talk about that, or don't we? Or is that a separate thing? I mean, I thought one of those ordinances I thought required to show the trees, how they're going to, where they're at, how they're going to be, if they go away or they're protected and all those things. Isn't that what we're showing?
The
Isn't that what
proposed tree ordinance that was considered by the council had some of that language in it, but that's not in effect as
Okay.
of yet.
Do you know if this would qualify for water district shed permit?
Probably.
We are in for permit now.
Okay. If you could submit what you submitted to them, that'd be helpful to us also to see what you're doing with the vegetation and the trees.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yep.
Further questions for the applicant, Commissioner Scheer?
When I drove by to look at the property, I obviously didn't walk on their property and go around the back, so I'm not clear. About how much excavation are you going to have to do to get those garages and that lower level compared to the existing property?
The existing is set up that way.
I know it's set up that way, but this looks like it's deeper, at least on the back side. Is that not
It's not much
correct?
deeper, no.
Okay.
It'll just be shifted, basically what you see now, it'll be shifted over further away from the house on, right now it's 3 feet from the lot line. It'll be, I guess I don't remember offhand.
But as
it'll
far as
be-
the overall elevation, you're not going to have to go a lot deeper to put
No,
this in?
no. No, from what's there now, I think we maybe have to go another 12 inches, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, and did you consider anything
Okay,
besides stamped concrete? And, if you add 2 driveways
Uh-huh.
and a stamped concrete patio, that is a lot of impervious
Yes.
treatment. There could be some other treatments that would be a little more eco-friendly for that amount of coverage. Have you considered anything else?
I guess I'm not familiar, as far
Some
as
kind of
doing a
pavers that would
paver
allow
patio?
drainage or something like that?
Yeah, we could definitely do pavers, it's a little bit more cost, but not too much more than a stamped colored patio back there.
I was just wondering if you'd considered that. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
Commissioner Olson and then Commissioner Lee.
Thanks. Hi. Well, just a real quick comment on the existing survey. It does show that tree where the driveway is being proposed, so there will be a tree removed. Anyway, I kind of am agreeing with the 2 driveways. I'm not exactly sure that you have to have that. And I know that you're still going to tuck the garages in the back, but you can do that with 1 garage, and there could be like a permanent easement, so everyone would have use of that in the future. So I would like to see you look at not having 2 driveways. And then also just looking at the design of the building, the height of the structure, and looking at what's there on the street, and it's just doesn't really kind of fit in. And so have you looked at trying to follow the same number of floors
Well,
as
in
what's
our
there?
opinion, it actually fits in better. The sleigh roofs, all that kind of stuff, the somewhat of a log cabin look to the right, maybe fits in better on a mountain in Colorado. We kind of did more of a farmhouse Minneapolis look. In our opinion, that fits in better than what's out there.
Than just the height. I guess that's what I'm talking about. It's like the height. And, if you just use just 1 driveway, that might allow you to widen your structure.
Well, we're well within all
Reducing the
the
height.
the rules and setbacks and height requirements.
Yeah. But
I believe it's 35 feet here, right, for the height, Carrie, maximum.
Yep.
Commissioner Lee.
Had you considered a single-family home on this property? I realize it is currently 2-family, but had you considered that at all?
We did, but we would have to rezone. And given what's on the street currently and the 2 new constructions that are up on the street next to us, that would not fit in. And I don't know if anybody would want to live between twin homes with a single family. And I don't know if we'd be able to rezone.
So there's a twin home to either side of that house on the same side of the street?
There's a new twin, yeah, they're all twin homes. And on the east side is a newer one built in the late 2006, 2010, something like that. And then there's another brand new one, a few properties to the west on the south side of the road.
On the south side?
Yeah.
Right. So it's not actually in a row of twin homes. In fact,
Oh.
there's several single-family homes still on that street.
No, there's
No.
several twin homes. I'm just talking about the new construction, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So they're all, yeah, most of them are twin homes on that street.
But there are still some single-family homes on that street?
Couple? On
Are-
the ends.
Is it zoned for two families? I mean, is that, they are?
They're all zoned R2.
Okay.
So they'd have to be a double dwelling unit.
So even homes that are single-family?
No,
No.
those are zoned R1.
Okay.
So you'd have to rezone the property if you wanted to have one dwelling unit on an R2
Okay.
lot.
Are you familiar, that's probably a question for Chris, I should have asked. Have there been a lot of, have we granted that? Have a lot of them flipped over to?
To single?
Yeah.
There's been one.
Okay, and then the existing ones that are single families, have those have remained R1s?
Yes.
Okay.
We haven't had anybody request an
Okay, okay. Then I think I am familiar with that street then, the view of that street. So, let me see, what was the other question? Oh, I have to ask about the massing. The character of it does not strike me as harmonious with what is in there. Even though, given that it's a two-family, the structures that are even two families that are there now are predominantly one-story structures. So this is a two-story structure. It is quite massive. Has, particularly on the roof side of it, I feel that perhaps you might want to look at trying to pull it back or vary the heights of the roof, or portions, maybe not the entire thing is at that height. It tends to feel a little looming. That's just my opinion when I see it.
The two new construction twin homes that were approved with the variances, both are 2 stories.
Yes, but is this one of them?
Yes.
So again, you can kind of see how the roof line varies. I think that is more about character. It's trying to relate to sort of the scale of the surrounding structures.
Well, I guess I should have brought in maybe the colored rendering. It's actually quite impressive. It's a lot of copper. We have rain chains. We have, we have some steel roof. We have, it's going to have a very high-end, beautiful look. I mean, we know who we're marketing to. We know what price range we're trying to get here. We're definitely trying to build something that people are going to want quickly.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Again, I just want to emphasize it's about the massing. It's not so much the materials that I object to. So.
Okay.
Commissioner Forrest.
Yeah, a couple of things. One is, basically we're looking at lot width and lot size variances, but these other issues, the pervious surface drainage, all of those things come into play here, and the height and massing and everything, because it is a smaller lot than what our current zoning code allows. One of my concerns, going back to drainage, is the wetland behind it. I don't know if anybody here can answer what has been the history of that wetland. I know there have been some drainage issues and some major changes to the amount of water ponding and stuff in that White Oak area or neighborhood back there. So I'm a little concerned my concern is, are we adding more to a problem, or are we doing something that is going to actually help things in general in the neighborhood? Because there's some property back in there that was never water before, and now it's just a stand of dead trees and water. So, and it looks like here that about 2/3 of the lot, the drainage on the lot, is now being directed toward the rear lot line and toward that water feature. So, I don't know if you have any history of that particular.
I don't. I guess I assume that's what the watershed Minnehaha permit was for, that we're applied with and going through that process now. But it really isn't much different from what's there now, as far as the 2/3 draining to the rear.
Yeah, it looks like, I'm not sure. It's really hard for me to tell on this, on the existing home survey, whether or not those arrows are also showing water being directed to the sides as well, and more toward, staying on the property, on that particular height, elevation of the property, so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions for the applicant? Commissioner Carr.
Just curious, what is the distance between the front and the back? It's a long wall there. I was just curious how long that was.
Front and the back of the house?
Front and back of the twin homes.
I guess I'd have to look for, I don't know off the top of my head.
What's on either side? Did you say other twin homes are on the other side?
Yes.
It's just one's a long, long wall there. I don't know how long it is, but 52 point. I know that in the new zoning ordinance, I believe that was just for remodels, that we had some, a section of the zoning ordinance having to do with sidewall articulation. Again, to keep in mind that there are neighbors next door, and one straight wall that goes 50 feet is too long and is not visually pleasing. So I don't know if you've considered at all in your design having some sidewall articulation in your plan.
We've got stone on that sidewall. I guess I was just under the understanding that we did meet all the requirements for the building code in Edina. It was just the two variances that we were having an issue with. So.
Chris, was there is the sidewall articulation part of what the council adopted, and B, was it part of the analysis here?
Yes, and it does meet that.
Okay. All right, any further questions for the applicant? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this point, I'd open the public hearing, and seeing no one in the audience other than Mr. Whiteman, I'm assuming there will be no public comments other than what we've received in writing. I would note that we have received 2 emails or more in writing on the dais this evening. Actually, there were Jim Stromberg, who lives at 3930 West 49th Street, submitted, looks like, several email exchanges. Chris, was there anyone else other than Mr. Stromman who
No.
submitted a comment? Okay, so both of these just are reflections of several communications you had with him. Okay. With no comment in the public hearing, I would take a motion to close the public hearing. In a second.
Second.
Hearing no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. All right, so the public hearing is closed. Comments from the commission. Commissioner Scheer.
Well, I guess I'll try to articulate this. I agree with Mr. Chair, your observations about the absence of the proper grading and drainage plan. It's hard to give a variance when we don't really have all the details. So I am in favor, personally, I guess, of putting this off as far as the final vote until the next meeting. But as I understand what we are being asked to review, we seem to have, and I have them too, along with my fellow commissioners, a number of design concerns, concerns about impervious surfaces, concerns about massing and how the look is appealing on the street. But I don't believe we're actually going under code to be asked to opine with to do anything other than opine, but not to vote with those in mind. Is that correct? Is my understanding correct?
Well,
Since there are no other variances
I actually think
being requested.
You know, my own perspective is that when we grant variances, we are entitled to put reasonable conditions on those variances, and part of what's happening here, in my view, is that the applicant has a smaller lot in area and in width, but wants to do the maximum allowable. Those aren't minimums that we have, those are maximums, and to me, it's, you know, that certainly is relevant to the variance, and putting conditions that would either shrink the amount of space or the amount of hardcover or both, or the mass, strike me as reasonable and permissible. I don't know, Carrie, do you have a quarrel with that?
No, I have no quarrel with
I
that.
don't, we would agree with you.
Then I guess I would propose that we consider deferring this until our next meeting when we have at least all the documents in place.
And I think we're headed in that direction, especially because of the grading and drainage. But what I would like to do to make that meeting as productive as possible is identify if there are directions that we're headed, notwithstanding the grading and drainage, which I hear you raising, Commissioner Scheer, that we make those clear tonight. Maybe there'd be modifications between this meeting and that meeting. And if there is other information other than the grading and drainage plan that we think needs to be included to make this something that we can review, we should outline that here as well. So, other comments?
Just to follow up, I would suggest that you look at just one driveway, and that would save that tree, and that would also reduce the impervious coverage. That'd be my comment. And it would be nice to see the color rendering and the materials.
Commissioner Lee?
I just want to be sure I understand this. So our R2 requirements state that the lot should not be less than 90 feet. Currently, it's 82 feet. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And it also states minimum square feet. Is that the square foot of the lot?
Correct.
Okay.
15,000 square feet.
Okay. And then this is already undersized.
Yes.
So the only time where we might, as a group, have an opportunity for the improvement of that lot is when something is actually going to be proposed to be done with that lot. So I have to ask the question that when something is going to be completely torn down and started with new, might not that be the time that we look at what we have in place? Obviously, we wanted, or we've got this requirement because we realize that for a two-family home, you're going to need a certain amount of separation between the properties. You need a certain amount of width on the property itself so that you can build a home or two homes. So I know we're going in with the assumption, well, what was there before, but in fact, that's kind of a moot point if everything is going to be torn down. So if we go along that path, what needs to happen? If, in fact, someone still wants to build a two-family on this property, we would have to really look at it and be very, very sure that somehow this 82-foot width did not compromise the intention of what we had set in place for the 90-foot parcels. Everything we tried to gain from that is, this is a new chance to achieve that on an 82-foot lot. If in fact it cannot be achieved, then maybe, again, that's the opportunity where someone needs to look at that and say, maybe it's better to come before us and say, can we zone that R1 and do a really nice single family on that lot? I'm just saying that's another choice. So I just want to put that out there because I'm having a hard time every time when we talk about complete teardown that we somehow have to abide by what was previously there, and yet it's not there anymore. So,
Commissioner Platter.
I say my only comment to that is that it's an R2 area. It's a buffer zone right now between 50th and France and the R1 neighborhood. So I believe R2 is still the right designation for that area. And there are, as to your point, some possible limitations, but I mean, part of that area that is proposed is to be that buffer to those R1 areas. So as far as what it's zoned right now, I would agree with what it is and what it would be.
Commissioner Forrest.
I agree there's a little bit of a disconnect because like a lot of the small lots, the small R1 lots that people are building large homes on, those lots were platted the way they were when houses weren't built as large as they are now, and I think that's kind of the situation that's going on here too. I also I agree with Commissioner Carr about the long railroad car look to the sides of the building that the neighbors are going to be seeing, especially since the building is now going to be more longitudinal than to the lot than it was previously. So, and once again, a lot of this, the trees, the height of the building, the design of the building, we can consider, or we should, we must consider also the effect on the character of the neighborhood. And if those are things that impact the neighborhood significantly enough, then it's time to consider what can be done to address that. So, either by the builder or by any conditions that we may put on this. So I think I agree with my other commissioners that say there's a few things here that are still may need to be addressed.
Commissioner Platter, no? Yes?
I don't know, can I make a motion to table this to the next meeting?
Well, do we have,
how do we?
Before you make a motion to continue, I want to just make sure everybody's had a chance to comment on it. Commissioner Carr, did you have a comment?
Well, again, I think it's, we've got the current ordinance, which envisioned a larger lot area and a larger lot width. We're dealing with a smaller lot area and a smaller lot width because that's the property the way it is. So again, and historically, this property, the existing home on there, it did fit that property size. So now we have a developer coming to us with a very, very large twin home plan that's, my view, is being squeezed onto this lot. Yes, it does meet the setback requirements, but there's something that's not quite right here because of the change in the zoning ordinances that required larger lot areas and larger width. So again, I think these comments that we're bringing up about the driveways, the sidewall articulation, the massing issues, all relate to that. And I would ask the developer to keep those in mind when they return next time.
Okay, further comments? I guess I would just echo what's been said. I think we're headed toward continuing this to a future meeting, but you've got a smaller lot than the standard lot, and you're trying to put the maximum on it. And I know for me, it'll be about mass, it'll be about footprint, but it'll also be about the hardcover, and so hardcover and the tree protection, et cetera. So I think you're hearing pretty consistent themes from the commission. So, Commissioner Platter, did you want to make your motion? And is there anything in particular you want them to come back with as part of that motion?
I'll make the motion, and at least what I heard, and people, if there's something else we can discuss in a minute, but what I heard is the grade-in drainage plan signed by a professional engineer. I heard consider one driveway only, and if there are two driveways, that there's some pervious surface or pavers for the parking area. Heard we wanted color renderings for it. Consider sidewall articulation, and then understand the massing of the building.
And so that's a motion to continue asking for those items come back. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, is there further discussion? I would just say, before we vote on this, I think Commissioner Lee had raised the possibility of rezoning. It sounds like there's some disagreement on the council about rezoning, but I do think as you go back and look at these things with the basic notion that, we're suggesting to you that what you're trying to put onto this is too much, and at some point you may want to think about whether a single-family home as opposed to a duplex makes more sense for you as a developer. Obviously, that would require a rezoning. I don't know how that would be received. You've heard one argument that the rest of the properties in the area are R2, but another that says maybe that would fit in better. So that's the other thing I'd ask you to think about. Commissioner Halva.
I'd also like to add, if I can, because it sounded like that some commissioners thought that the design didn't really seem to fit with the character of the neighborhood, and like the whole log cabin thing. So I guess maybe rethink that portion a little bit, or just take a look at it also next time.
Very good. All right, further discussion on the motion. Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. Okay, so it'll be continued to the next meeting, and if, Carrie, you'll be in touch with the applicant, or Chris, you'll be in touch with the applicant. All right, thank you, Mr. Whiteman. Next up on the agenda is a comprehensive plan amendment, residential density for mixed-use areas.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Scheer.
I seem to have arrived without that part of my packet. Is there another copy anywhere that I could have for this discussion?
Maybe you've got that. No, that was a different one.
It'll be difficult to read it all.
I've read it once, but I don't have it with me for discussion purposes. I can just be a good listener. I just didn't know if there was an extra one lurking about. Thank you.
All right, Carrie, you're going to introduce this?
I will. Thank you, Chair Staunton, members of the Commission. Before you is another comprehensive plan amendment. Comes as a result of the Lennar project. What Met Council has told us as they kind of preliminarily reviewed our comp plan amendment for that project was that we need to do another comprehensive plan amendment to establish residential density ranges for our mixed-use areas that better align with the descriptions, existing descriptions in our comp plan for each of those districts. As we talked a little bit about at our last meeting, in the comprehensive plan, kind of the preamble to the land use district, it talks about for residential uses, the density is defined as dwelling units per acre. For non-residential and mixed uses, intensity is typically defined in terms of floor area ratio. So that's been kind of the guiding principle for determining density in mixed use areas. Met Council has told us that we can't do that. We have to have a specific density range that matches our descriptions of these districts. And as we'll see in a minute, our density ranges don't match those descriptions. In our commercial mixed-use areas, the density that's suggested is actually less dense than our single-family residential districts. So this is the future land use plan within the comprehensive plan. So the districts are they're named differently from our zoning districts. But just to quickly, all of the yellow area, that's our low-density residential, our single-family homes, essentially. The areas that are kind of the tannish and peach, that's our medium-density residential and high-density residential. The areas that are the pink and reddish, those are our mixed-use districts. Within the Southdale area, Grandview, 50th and France, Morningside. We have an office residential that's also a mixed-use district that's in white. And then the purple is industrial and the greens are our parks. So just to quickly run through the different land use categories and the density ranges. So this first graphic indicates our low-density residential, which allows up to 5 units an acre. Medium density up to 12 units an acre, and our high density residential up to 30 units, and we have some language that talks about you can exceed 30 units for senior housing. Then we move to our mixed use districts, and you see the comp plan starts out talking about floor area ratio as the guiding principle. But we do have this 2 to 3 units per acre. This is the neighborhood commercial, the Morningside, smaller commercial nodes. Office residential suggested at 2 to 3 units an acre. Mixed use center, which is 50th and France, Grandview, the Centennial Lakes area, we suggest 1 to 2 units an acre. Community activity center, the Southdale area, suggested at 2 to 3 units an acre. So this graphic just quickly indicates, it's kind of messy, but you see all of the yellow area are low-density residential where we allow up to 5 units an acre, and then our mixed-use, more intense districts with the 1 and 2 and 2 to 3, just a demonstration that those districts are guided for a less dense residential densities than our low-density residential areas. So next we did a comparison of how our adjacent cities compare to Edina in terms of their comprehensive plans and how they guide mixed use and their residential areas. So starting with Bloomington, their medium density, somewhat similar to ours at 5 to 10. They have a high density residential, they have no limit in that area. Met Council has told us that you can't do that, you have to have a cap on that. And you see their mixed-use areas. They have a high-intense mixed use that allows up to 60 units an acre, and then the area around the airport up to 131 units an acre. The city of Richfield, they don't have maximums; they have minimums. With their high-density residential, a minimum of 24, and in their mixed use, they suggest 50 plus. St. Louis Park, a little bit higher medium density, but their high density and mixed use up to 75 units an acre, and their commercial areas between 20 and 50. Minnetonka has for their high density residential 12 plus, and then in their mixed use areas they don't have an established range either. They state that density is based on site location and site conditions. Minneapolis has a little higher densities yet, with their medium density between 20 and 50 units an acre, high density up to 120, and their very high density area, the downtown Minneapolis, 120 plus. So you see all of these densities much larger than our existing and actually what we're proposing here this evening. So to get into the different the different districts and what's suggested here in the ordinance, the resolution that's before you in draft form. Starting with the neighborhood commercial areas, again, that's the Morningside commercial node, the Valley View and Wooddale area, and 70th and Cahill. Again, the comprehensive plan suggests 2 to 3 units per acre. This was suggested by the Planning Commission at our last meeting when we had kind of our preliminary discussion, that medium density range between 5 and 12. The office residential, again, that's the areas along Highway 169 and the Pentagon Park area along 77th, and then some of our office districts on the west side of France.
Could I interrupt for 1 minute? Is it necessary to have a minimum? I believe in some of the other cities, they start with 0 and they go, isn't the cap really more critical?
You're right.
Could you just not have a minimum or have the minimum be 0?
You could. I believe Bloomington had started with the 0 number.
Yeah. Just curious. I don't know if you've looked at that issue or not, but certainly would avoid having to come back for a variance or a zoning amendment if someone came in with a land use that had less density.
Yep, that makes sense. So within that office residential, we're suggesting between 12 and 30 units, similar to the high-density residential designation. Again, you recall that's the area of Pentagon Park where we were encouraging that developer to include some housing. So at this range would allow them to do that.
Sorry to interrupt again, Carrie. Was that enough, the office residential? Do you believe that's enough density for housing to work in an area like that, or is that something that maybe would addressed by the PUD process? I'm just curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it would likely work for Pentagon Park because it's all held in common ownership, and it would be a PUD for the entire 42 acres.
And
so it would probably work in that instance, but some of those other more isolated sites, that's not going to be a real high density.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if that should go up to be more, because in reality, I think if those sites, they're going to be more of a high density residential type discussion. If it's to be probably viable there, economically, that's maybe all that would work. And I agree on Pentagon Park, because if you include 42 acres, it works out rather well. But on these other ones, say if you have a couple acre, 3 acre lot or something, it's a comment. I don't know if other commissioners may agree on that, but I would see that one actually increasing to be more consistent with the higher density residential. So
That's a good point.
I'll just add, I was going to have the same comment. I thought that was too low of a density for that district, so I agree that it should be higher.
Part of staff's thinking here was to stay consistent with our existing high-density residential range, but you raise excellent points. It's not the density that we're seeing in our redevelopment projects right now. So the next one is the mixed-use center, and you recall the Planning Commission had some discussion last week about potentially dividing that district up. So the MXC, the mixed use, is the Grandview area here, 50th and France, and then kind of the greater Southdale Centennial Lakes area here where the Byerly's project is. And the Met Council, I ran that idea of splitting these into 2 different districts. I ran that by the Met Council, and they saw that as a major comprehensive plan amendment. Not against what we were trying to do there, but they said that would be a major amendment, and the time frame gets stretched out quite a bit. So we can do it that way. The way they're viewing this now is more of an administrative, just kind of bringing our comprehensive plan into conformance with our existing descriptions of these districts. So we could proceed in one of 2 ways. We could leave that 1 to 2 range, recognizing that it needs to be adjusted and that another comprehensive plan amendment is forthcoming once we talk about the Grandview and settle on that density range. The other option is to increase it to the 20 to 30 units per acre, whatever that range may be, and we could still pursue another change at Grandview. In this 20 to 30 range, it would be consistent with existing developments in all 3 of these districts. When you look at Grandview, the Grandview Square development, that's essentially this property right here, that's 29 units an acre, so it would fit within that 12 to 30 range. The 50th and France project, there on the corner of 50th and France, that's 23 units an acre, so again, it would be consistent. And the Byerly's site project, that was also 24 units an acre, so it would fit within that range. So food for thought, that's something that we'll want to discuss. Do we want to increase that range now or leave it 1 to 2, recognizing to the Met Council that we have to fix that?
Carrie, I understand with the 50th and France structure as well as the Grandview Square structure, those are already built out. What's the consequence, if any, on the Byerly's project, which is midstream?
Yeah, it would not be consistent with our comp plan.
Well, and so, I mean, they obviously they're in the process of building it, and the PUD and the final development plan have been approved. Would it hold up any building permits on the subsequent buildings?
Yeah, it's a good question.
All right.
Those were the Met Council is aware of that inconsistency. We've told them that. They've suggested as long as we recognize that it needs to be fixed and we're working on it, it would be okay.
Well, I think that's, before the council sees this, they're going to need to figure out the answer to that question. Okay.
I would be in favor of changing it now to the 12 to 30. Again, it doesn't require that there are any there because, say, Grandview, for example, I mean, I just think of that whole area as a PUD, right? Probably what may happen there. So you'd have those options within that, and this is a guideline. So, and part of these other areas, especially when you're talking about the Byerly's project that's actually in motion right now, to me, it would be a good thing to clarify that and have that approved so there's not an issue at this point, and that it could slow down anything if something could happen. There is that little door opening there to have that. That's just my opinion. And deference to Grandview, I understand what may be going on, but that's still my opinion.
Maybe you could explain, what would be the disadvantage to just leaving it the way it is? Because of future developments?
Potential disadvantage would be if someone were to challenge us on the buyer lease project.
Okay.
And that's where I think we need some clarification from Met Council.
Okay.
Are we protected because we are studying it now?
Well, and because we approved a project already. We haven't
Right.
given the building permits, but we have given approval already.
And then if we do make this change, then that would take care of that issue?
It would.
Okay. And so again, I would recommend 0 to 30, going back to that comment previously.
Commissioner Forrest?
I agree with those comments in that, to me, it looks like these low numbers where you can have this many dwelling units, meaning this many apartment buildings versus individual dwelling units per acre. It's kind of, it is very strange. But also, I agree about the mixed use change, because it just seems to identify dwelling in a mixed use project as so low just seems to fall almost outside the definition of a mixed use application. So I also agree with that. And then the 0-2, I like in that when you look at regional medical, 12 to 80 senior residential units per acre. Well, what if you choose not to have any? Is it falling outside of these guidelines at that point? Because there's a little bit of ambiguity with the way it's structured here, including with the fact that they're saying these are guidelines, and yet we're kind of held to them pretty tightly. So.
Okay.
Sorry, we're kind of jumping in as it
fine.
goes.
This is all good discussion. So the next area is the Community Activity Center, which is where this all started. Again, this is guided 2 to 3. The range we're suggesting 12 to 75. Maybe we change that to 0 to 75. The Lennar project is 52 units an acre, so that would be consistent then. Again, the CAC is just the Southdale area. The Southdale site itself, the Galleria to the south, and then everything on the east side. Well, I'll show a graphic here. So you've got the Southdale site, everything on the east side of York, with the exception of the few single-family homes that are left, and then the Galleria.
Excuse me, do you feel that number is 75? Is it upper cap? Is that high enough or not? Or would there be, because, again, I was looking at what some of the other cities have done, and it appears that they may have some higher limits, but I don't St. Louis Park, though, has gone with 75, and they PUD for a high end. Any thoughts on that as an upper range, 75? Is that...
Yeah, again, comparing to some of our surrounding communities, this would still be on the low end. And we know from the research we did with the senior project that St. Louis Park approved a project that had over 100 units an acre. So they've gone over their cap on their comprehensive plan also. So yeah, maybe 75 is not enough, especially when you look at the description here, as it's described as the most intense district in terms of uses, height, and coverage. So,
in a certain respect, I mean, that particular area, the greater Southdale area, is a very urban area and becoming more urban with the development. So you might argue for a higher number in that instance.
Yep.
Hey, Carrie, I don't know if you know this or not, but the Weston, how many units per acre would that, assuming it's all residential, do you have any idea how many units per acre that would be approximately?
I haven't factored that. When it was built, it was all, I'm not sure if it's separate owner. I think it is separate ownership now, but when it was built, it was all one owner, so you'd take the density spread out over the entire site. I don't know what that is off the top of my head.
I think that might be interesting to know, to maybe test it with these numbers and see what that is. And
yeah,
I don't know if it's more, but that would just be interesting to know.
especially now that it is divided into two separate ownerships. So the next one is the regional medical, where we've amended the comprehensive plan to allow senior housing, and the range suggested here is up to 80 units an acre, and that would just fit the project, the senior project that's proposed for that site, which actually will be on your next agenda. They have submitted application, so that'll be final rezoning for that project. It was about a year ago where preliminary approval was granted for that one. But
Now,
that one is at 80 units an acre.
And we've got another potential residential in the regional medical coming through. Would we just have to amend the comprehensive plan again when that comes through?
We would, because that's not a senior housing
Right.
project, so we would
So
have
the
to-
rest of those multifamily units in that regional medical are all senior housing?
that would be the only one right now.
So the properties kind of to the east of the hospital but north of 66th, that's not part of the regional medical?
Right, that is high
That's
density
high density.
residential, right.
The other side, I'm thinking east. So that
that
whole area, right. So there's several high rises in that area that are just high density residential.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
So with that, staff is recommending there's a draft resolution that's before you. City Council is scheduled to hold a public hearing at their next meeting on June 17th. So I would take forward any of your recommendations this evening as part of that resolution. I can stand for questions.
Sorry, this is a public hearing?
It is a public hearing.
Okay,
There aren't too many people.
doesn't
in the
look real
audience.
crowded, but I was just to understand that. Okay.
Yeah, so we should just, for now, if there's any further questions, obviously we've given Carrie a lot of questions, but if you have any further, let's ask them now, and then we'll open and close the public hearing, and then we can have a discussion on the item. Commissioner Olson.
Thanks. Okay, well, I'm just going through this real quickly. Like I said, I agree with going beyond 12 to 30 units per acre for the office residential. For the mixed-use center, I think it should just be the one district, and not, I don't think we should have any districts that have 1 to 2 units per acre, dwelling units per acre remaining. Let's see, do both. For the CAC, I was thinking the same thing about where do we get the 12 to 75. I think that might be low, and we might want to consider increasing that range. For the regional medical, if we think that that's already going to be tight, we might want to look at that, increasing that also from the 12 to 80. And this is just maybe off. I had a question on this, the per zoning code, where you can increase the density if it has, proximity to hospitals or, below grade parking, provision of park and open space. Do we have that anywhere else, or is that kind of a PUD slipped into this?
That language was put into the comprehensive plan for that 6,500 France project where we allowed senior housing in this district.
Specifically for that development, and then we're going to just apply that to any others. So, okay. And then just the comment about going 0 to the top range. My only concern with that, I mean, I like flexibility. Obviously, I love that, but it's if we do want to promote some dwelling units, within these districts, I think it's almost good to have a minimum, so that we do push for that, versus them coming in as saying, well, we don't want to have any. I mean, if that's a district that we would like to see some, dwelling units added, I think it's good to have a minimum amount. So that's just versus 0. Those are my comments. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Carrie. I will open the public hearing, and seeing no one here for the public hearing, and I don't think we received any written comments on the public hearing. Oh, we did. There was one from Pentagon Revival LLC, from Scott Tankinoff. Scott, Carrie, he references a meeting that he had with you. Anything to elaborate on?
We have a standing meeting with Scott and his development team twice a month, or is it once a month? Well, it's been reduced down since his project has been approved. Just to go through various issues. It's been mainly the development agreement that the city's been working on with him. But that's the meeting that he's referring to as our standing meetings.
All right. So seeing no public comment or public comment as part of the public hearing, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
In a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. All right, so the public hearing is closed. One question I did have, going to Commissioner Olson's point about minimums, if we did a minimum in the office residential, would that require the Pentagon Park to have some residential?
Yeah, that gets, it's in a mixed-use district like that, with our zoning ordinance allows office as a principal use. If we were to require housing in any development, we'd have to make changes to our zoning ordinance also. Establishing a minimum, I think it would be, if you're going to have housing, you have to have at least this much. I think that's...
So we'd want to clarify that it doesn't require housing, it's just if housing is part of the mix, it has to be that density.
Right.
Okay. The other question I had was on page 3 of the resolution. The first item under the now therefore 3.01, resolution 2014-51 is rescinded. What is 2014-51?
That was the resolution that approved the comprehensive plan amendment for the Lennar project.
Oh, so that was already done.
It was done, and I've incorporated all of that into this resolution, so it becomes one resolution for submittal to the Met Council. That
Okay.
was recommended by Roger Knutson, our city attorney.
Okay. Further comments? Commissioner Carr?
So you're asking us to vote on this resolution tonight? And would we be allowed to, are we going to be allowed to make suggestions as far as the caps go? Okay.
Yeah, I think since we don't often have a resolution in front of us when we do these, so it would be really helpful to, make specific changes to this document, because that'll make it the easiest for Carrie to bring that recommendation forward to the council. And I know there's been a lot of discussions. I don't know if you want to go through, there were some comments. I'm not sure we tracked them as we went through, but perhaps noting the highlighted items, we should maybe work our way through before we then have a motion. Commissioner Olson?
I guess my question is, it sounded like do we know what those are going to be? Or were we kind of saying, well, we should look at increasing it, but do we know what we want to increase it to? Or do we need more thought on this? So we would be approving a resolution that would be specifically saying what the range would be? And do we have that answer? I don't know that I do.
We will be a recommendation to the council that would be the...
Oh, okay. So we'd kind of be making up some numbers. If we think 80 isn't enough, we'd be saying 100. Okay, well.
Well, I wouldn't say making up numbers.
Yeah,
I would say more in respect to what the other cities may have as a
So follow
guideline.
some of those, okay.
Correct.
what
And staff recommendations and what rates have been. So kind of factoring all those in together if there are modifications to change.
And knowing from Met Council that they're saying we can't just have a plus number, that we have to establish a cap.
So I guess maybe as a way of proceeding, what I'd suggest is that with respect to the highlighted items in the packet, can we just identify if anybody has proposed changes to any of the highlighted numbers?
Do you want to go through them by...
We can go through one at a time if you want.
One by one.
All right, so how about neighborhood commercial? The staff report recommends 5 to 12 dwelling units per acre.
I would agree with that.
Any objections to that?
Agree.
Commissioner Forrest?
But I think that might be one, if there aren't any other reasons for not doing the zeros, this might be one of the sections where we would want it, because if it's a small neighborhood commercial, maybe somebody doesn't want to put since we're not looking necessarily at a large parcel.
I would respectfully disagree.
Well, discuss.
Well, I think these areas do have housing right now. I think that should be, and again, it's not requiring, to me, if it's not zero, it's not requiring housing, but it's the guidelines, and if somebody comes in without it, it's part of the development process at that point. So I would like to encourage potential housing within these areas, and many of them, like I said, there are right now, so I would just be concerned if we put zero that no one would consider housing in these areas. That's my reasoning.
I agree with the encouraging the housing. I really do. I don't know if there is any residential in the neighborhood commercial in all of these. Like Valley View and Wooddale, the apartment buildings aren't zoned neighborhood commercial. Some of the, there is some buildings that have residences above storefronts though, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, but if somebody wanted to put a new commercial building in, say, where the ice cream shop is or something, and without housing, the way it's written here becomes a little bit misleading or ambiguous or inaccurate if they choose not to do it. That's the only reason, just so that it can't be, just to make it very clear that unless we really do want to require that every new project comes forward has the housing included, that this could, which in some of these we might want to. I don't know, but I just.
I don't think this. I mean, people can disagree, but I don't think this requires people to have housing when you have density guidelines.
Well, it shouldn't with guidelines, but the way it's written here with the bottom number, it almost sounds like you have to have senior housing and residential in the regional medical district.
I think from the previous conversation that we had that I don't know what the language is, Carrie. I mean, there needs to be some clarification about the fact that if there isn't housing proposed, I mean, we just talked about that in the context of the Pentagon Park. If there's not housing proposed, then those residential density standards don't apply. Only the commercial density standards would apply.
Correct. That's when the floor area ratio is used.
But do we need a sentence somewhere in the resolution that makes that clear? Because now this is the second time we've had confusion here. I suspect there'll be confusion elsewhere on the same point. So is that something that would go in the text right before?
Could you just use the word any? Any senior housing, any residential?
Well, rather than repeat it in every block, I'd be inclined to put it right at the or at the beginning, because you say the development guidelines and on the bottom of page 3 and the top of page 4 is where you kind of lead into the chart, and that could include a sentence that would indicate that residential. Right. Mm-hmm. Right before the chart, something to the effect of residential density standards apply when residential is proposed, and commercial applies when commercial is proposed.
I think that's a good suggestion. We can do that.
Commissioner Carr.
Going back to whether we start with 0 and go up to 12 residential dwelling units, I think that for the neighborhood commercial, allowing a little more flexibility, I think, makes sense. You might, again, the example of the ice cream store, if that was replaced with some commercial building, and someone wanted to put in 3 condominiums above that, this would restrict that. So because it's very close to neighborhoods, and in fact it's serving adjacent neighborhoods, I think we should allow for residential units that are not necessarily grand in scale. They could be 2 to 3.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think particularly in light of the character of the neighborhoods that we're talking about there, Morningside's commercial, the Valley View Wooddale, and 70th Cahill, those are pretty, I could see less density if there was going to be residential included there. But I'm not sure I feel the same way about the other areas when we get to them.
Say 5 to 12 isn't that dense. I mean, when you look at putting in a couple apartments over a building. That's per acre. So
Yeah,
it's,
because you said, what, it's 1
I
to
mean,
5?
R1 is
family?
what, 5, 4, what's R1 again?
1 to 5.
1 to 5, so it's, I mean, it's really no more than single-family housing at the low end.
All right, so what I'm going to do is just, let's leave that for the moment. Whoever gets to make the motion can fashion that one the way you want to.
Clarifying question.
Yeah.
We're focusing on the per acre count. That might not be the per building count or the per developer count, correct?
That's correct, yep.
Okay.
All right, so the office residential, 12 to 30, I think there was some discussion about this. Somebody suggested higher.
12 to 75? I went back and looked at the other cities, and it seemed like 75 was kind of a mixed use.
And then to
No.
Commissioner Carr's point about 0 to 75, do we want 12 to 75 or 0 to 75?
Doesn't say if there's a 0, if there are any, to me, this would probably be it. Just, to me, this one makes more sense for a 0 bottom. I don't know about other people's thoughts.
Why is that?
It's because it's office residential, and kind of depending on the mix of what's going to be at that project. I think it would allow more flexibility in this case, where we're not, I don't think there's, in general, it's hard to require residential in an office area in general, not always, but I think it would give us a little more flexibility on that.
Commissioner Forrest, then Commissioner
We do
Carr.
have the office zoning thing too. This is something we don't have yet. It's only right now being projected, possibly in the near future, Pentagon Park is using that zoning. Is that correct?
That's correct. I can't think of any
It just has no current
areas
examples.
that are currently guided
So
OR that
if
has
we want
residential.
to, this is one of those areas where if we want to encourage mixed use or encourage including residential, then we could leave it in and not have it be 0 since we have a different zoning designation for 0. But again, that has to do more with what our preferences are going forward, I think.
Commissioner Carr?
I would just like to address the 75 as a cap. I don't know that this particular area, office residential, it says it's located, land uses are transitional areas along major thoroughfares or between higher density districts and residential districts. So it's between higher density districts. Before we decide on the cap of 75, I guess the high density district would be the Southdale area. Is that the highest density district that we currently have? So I'd like to, if this is the cap here, then you would expect a higher cap in our highest density district, and I just want to make sure we are in agreement with what that cap is before we agree to the 75.
I was going to suggest 100 for the cap for the CAC.
I think part of that language that they're referencing is if you turn to page 10 of the resolution, you see that this is the Southdale area. In the OR district that's located on the west side of France, you see there's the high-density residential on the west side of the OR. So the OR is in between the more intense commercial on the east side of France and then the high-density residential on the west side of France.
Well, I will just say this one thing. I mean, obviously raising this cap, this is definitely a planning issue. And raising the caps ultimately changes the nature of the city and the developments that go in. The caps are maybe more similar to what St. Louis Park is doing in terms of, it seems like having more of the mixed development with residential and office, which I think, seems to be working very successfully for that city. But I just thought I'd mention that. We have to keep that in mind.
Commissioner Forrest.
Now that I see, I wasn't really considering, I didn't look closely enough at that map that Planner Teague referenced, and seeing it running along the west side of France there, then maybe that isn't a thing where we would want to require a minimum number of residential units in any particular project. So, food for thought.
Carrie, what's the density on the Lennar project?
52 units an acre.
Sometimes it takes a while for the sound waves to get from my ears to my brain, but Commissioner Olson raised a question a few minutes ago about how we're arriving at these. And the more we talk about this, this is all being driven by this Lennar project. And here we are basically throwing a dart at a dartboard for all the rest of these. Is that really the right way to do this? Shouldn't it take a little more, if we're going to... Yeah. I guess the longer the conversation goes on, the more uncomfortable I am setting these densities without a little more thorough conversation about why in any particular area. Maybe the thing to do is to take care of the Lennar, which is the CAC, change that to 55, and leave it at that. I don't know. I throw that out. What do people think? I'm feeling a little at sea about why we're choosing various densities in each of these.
I would agree with you. That's what I'm saying. This is a significant planning decision that we're making here, and we haven't had the time to analyze making these changes, why we're making the changes.
And that was part of staff's reasoning for setting the low numbers, being consistent with our high-density residential, having that 12 to 30 range, but consistent with what we're doing now. So that was where we were coming from in setting these numbers.
Carrie, are you setting them based on the current developments or what the current comprehensive plan requires?
A little bit of both.
Okay.
Like the RMD district, we use that number for that specific project. The CAC, we did increase higher just because of the way that's described in the comprehensive plan. But the others that were suggested at the 12 to 30 range, it was staying consistent with the high-density residential range as it exists today.
Commissioner Platter.
I guess I'm not as, we use the word concerned that we're kind of diving into this. I think there has been a fair amount of thought into this based on other ones, as what we're seeing. So I guess I'm not as concerned as maybe some other people are that we're changing that much. I think there has been some thought into it. That's just me. And it seems that's the way the projects we've seen, and that's the way it seems like we've been approving similar type things that fit this. So I'm not as concerned as maybe some other folks are with these changes.
Commissioner Scherer.
I would point out that we'll have an opportunity within the next year to look at the plan again and make additional changes, which might argue for not going for the moon at this juncture, but going for something that's reasonable in terms of, the projects that we've been looking at and the areas that we've been focusing on recently.
I think they're all fairly reasonable based on that respect. And maybe outlier too, but I think they are reasonable for what which directions we've been going as to date.
I'm just kind of resonating with Commissioner Carr's comment about this is the plan becomes a vehicle that drives development or can drive development. It should be, I think, if it's authored correctly. And some of you who haven't been through putting a plan together, some of us have. It's an interesting exercise. You're going to find it very intriguing in terms of your interaction with the council and philosophical decisions about directions that you want the community to be going and that the public wants the community to be going, and that the council will support. And you'll have an opportunity within the next year to have intensive conversation about all of that as you revise the comprehensive plan. Some of us won't be here for that fun, Kevin, will we? No.
So I'm sorry, we were making progress and I threw a monkey wrench in it, but so Commissioner Carr.
Well, what I'm hearing is that perhaps we should, at least I'm leaning towards adopting the numbers that Carrie has proposed, because they are based on the current comprehensive plan and, in fact, the developments that have been approved by the city, with the exception of the Southdale area, where we're going to increase that number to take into account this most recent development, to be consistent with that. And that also isn't as worrisome because it is in an area that's designed to be high intensity. So that's where I think the Planning Commission is ending up.
What do you think?
If I understand, then we're just adopting the numbers that we're not changing them now. I guess that was my concern, is that we were starting to change the range tonight.
Right.
And that's where I was a little bit more uncomfortable with doing that, because we really didn't, on what basis? I hadn't put thought into that,
right.
so
the theme behind what you're proposing is trying to reflect what actually has been developed in each of these areas.
Correct. And where there wasn't a development, just staying consistent with our existing high-density range, the OR district, as an example. Since we don't have any examples there, the range I was suggesting was just to stay consistent with the high-density residential as it exists today.
Another quick question.
Yeah, Commissioner Wilson.
Carrie, when we had that, was it a sketch plan or just for the, was it like homeless? I'm going.
Oh, the Beacon.
The Beacon. Do you know what the density of that was?
Yeah, it's a pretty small site. It was just over an acre, so the density is in the 35 units an acre.
Okay, so
range.
that would still be meet your.
And those are very small units, weren't they?
And they were very small units, yeah.
So that would still meet the, I'm doing this with my reading glasses, that doesn't work. So we've got 12 to 80, so we're cool with that. I just want, okay.
And that's going to require a further comprehensive plan change anyway, because it's not senior housing.
Yeah.
But density-wise, it'd be nice not to have to revisit that again. Right.
Can I make a motion?
Sure.
I would make a motion to approve, as noted on the staff report, the densities for these districts.
Is there a second?
Second.
So, of big concern to me has been the Grandview district. And I've been worried, since we're in the middle of a planning process there, about the alarm that might be created by changing the density there. But now that we're characterizing it as a reflection of what we have already been doing, then I'm comfortable with changing the comprehensive plan to reflect what we're already doing. What I don't want to be, I don't want people to perceive at least my vote on this as suggesting that I am voting to increase density in that area in particular, because I think there's considerably more study to be done. And to Commissioner Olson's point earlier, I think before we do a more comprehensive look at densities, and we may in fact want to push for greater density in some places, we ought to just be more thoughtful and deliberate about that. Commissioner Scherer.
And I would just add, because we're going to have an opportunity to go through that process next year, that adds to my comfort level in approving this at sort of our current operating standard.
Okay. Commissioner Platter.
I say I agree with Commissioner or Chair Staunton on that, and again, these are guidelines. So all these projects that come through, in my mind, stand on their own and have their own discussion. So,
Although I will say, part of the reason we're in this fix is because we have to change the comprehensive plan if it exceeds or if it's not within the range, then that requires a comprehensive plan amendment.
correct, but within that, there is a discussion on, so I just want to make that clear to everyone that we have that discussion. So this isn't, none of this is saying everything in whatever district is going to have 80 units per acre.
Right, I see your point. It's the reverse point, that just because the comprehensive
Yeah.
plan permits this doesn't mean that everything else that
And
goes along
all
with it.
projects are looked at on their merit.
Okay. Commissioner Carr and then Commissioner Forrest.
I would just like to make a friendly amendment to the motion. I think that the motion was limited just to the density set forth in the resolution, but I believe that the motion should also include our, that we recommend to the City Council approval of the attached resolution in its entirety.
Is that acceptable to the mover?
Yes, that
And to
was
the
what was
seconder.
intended.
Yes.
But good clarification, yes.
Commissioner Forrest.
Do you want to add the clarifying language that you suggested earlier, Chair Staunton, regarding those districts where we don't necessarily need to require residential?
Is that acceptable to the mover?
I don't know, not at this point.
Acceptable to me.
So
Well,
that was the
Convince-
language in advance of the,
The general statement that would
it was the statement that.
oh, okay.
If
Yes.
residential.
I'm sorry, I
Okay.
misunderstood.
Okay.
Yes, that's acceptable.
Yeah, I said a lot of things. It wasn't all of them.
Some of us
It's the problem with referring to what I said. Okay, so with those any other amendments to the motion? And is there further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. The motion passes. Jeez Louise, this has been smooth.
Did we have to second that? Did anybody second that?
Nancy seconded. Nancy seconded repeatedly.
Okay, and I agree to all of the proposed
Right,
amendments.
right. All right, so next up is reports and recommendations. We have the work plan. At our last, I think our last two meetings have only included 5 members, so we were feeling like we didn't have enough ballast to have this conversation, but we have 7 members tonight, so. I know, Commissioner Carr, you had asked for this to be put on originally, but others have also asked. I don't know that there's a particular agenda to this, but I would welcome comments on what our progress is, if there's things we ought to modify, if there's, the idea was to check in halfway through the year. We will be, as a matter of background, we will be asked to bring the 2015 work plan to the council in September, so just 3 months from now. So it is a good time to check in on this work plan and see if there are things that we ought to raise the priority on, or things that we ought to acknowledge need to wait until next year. Any thoughts? Commissioner Carr.
I just want to reiterate my comments from our last meeting, in which I would like to see some progress, if possible, be made on the lighting regulations. Light pollution is an issue, and especially as more developments keep coming into the area. And I believe we had discussed possibly having Carrie take a look at what some other cities may be doing. I don't know if there's any locally within the state of Minnesota that we could take a look at, but certainly looking at other states as well, just to give us an idea of what is out there versus what our current lighting ordinance is.
Yeah, I was going to try to have something on our next agenda, which is shaping up to be quite large. But we've done some of that background already about other cities, and maybe we can bring it forward in some kind of a rough draft.
Yeah, and
form.
Carrie, I'd certainly be willing to help, so if you have something rough you'd like to send to me, I'd take a look at that
I'll
too.
do that.
On the other policy, well, so then there are the other three zoning ordinance amendments, the sign ordinance. The parking regulations, proof of parking, and the maximum minimum size for apartments in senior housing. Where is that on your kind of radar?
Yeah, this has been on our radar for a couple of years now. These are pretty large undertakings to do that. So given current workloads right now, I'm having a hard time seeing we're going to get to those two.
Okay, so items 1, 2, and 3 there, under zoning ordinance amendments. Commissioner Forrest.
Do we still have that ordinance for senior housing that it has to, regarding
Yeah, I think that's what it refers to.
minimum size? Is it, so that's one I think could administratively be handled a little bit more quickly if we get something that's more reasonable versus something that was designed for a project a number of years ago.
Yeah, but we've talked about possibly even just striking the maximums and minimums. You know, a lot of these projects we've been handling through the PUD ordinance where we're not getting into the detail of you have to have this size. You know, we discuss how many 3-bedroom, how many 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, but haven't been mandating.
I guess that was a square footage thing for the senior housing, though, wasn't it? Where it couldn't be too large. The units had to be small, so that I think the intention was to maintain affordability going forward. Is that still on the books, that one?
That is still on the books.
That's one I think we should handle quickly and just perhaps strike it or change the language to be something that's realistic.
Carrie, are you saying that that's an easier one to tee up than the first two?
That one would be easier to tee up than those first two, yep.
All right.
It just seems like that language should be stricken to that point.
So maybe we work on that and we acknowledge that items 1 and 2 under zoning ordinance amendments are going to probably have to wait till the end of the year or drift over into 2015.
Yep.
On the policy recommendations, we really haven't made much progress on the sustainability, pedestrian-friendly, affordable housing standards for PUD. It's still a priority, but we just haven't been able to make headway. I think that's one that's likely to be end of the year, if not into next year. The midterm comprehensive plan consideration, actually Commissioner Schroeder has done quite a bit of work, and along with Carrie and Karen Kurt, we're trying to dovetail that proposed process with the Vision 2040 process that staff is rolling out along with the council. Yeah, we won't be around by then. It's for our kids. And then we have been working, obviously we got a tree ordinance out. We're going to work some more on that. That's coming back to us.
If I could, we were scheduled for August 5th. That's been bumped to August 18th. So if you want to tentatively, sorry about that.
Right in the middle of your vacation.
The what? For what that is?
The tree ordinance. We were doing a work session with the council. It sounds like
more
it's
trees going down.
I have to check.
That would be the work session with the city council.
And then we have been doing the monitoring residential redevelopment standards and ordinance. I would like, and I exchanged emails with Carrie today, I think it would be very good to have a kind of soup to nuts session on how does an application go through the process. We've had a lot of discussion about the impact that enforcement or the challenges of enforcement has on what we adopt, and what I'd like to do is set up maybe even a work session where we have the right combination of staff members come in and give us the kind of comprehensive walkthrough of when an application comes through, who touches it and what review do they do, so that we understand that as we're considering both applications that come to us and we know what to expect in terms of follow-up, and potential ordinance revisions that we're considering so that we know what's feasible and what isn't. So I think we'll be able to get that together here in the next couple of months.
Yeah. What I'm kind of envisioning, we've had a lot of, we have a new building official, and there've been some changes there, so they're looking at their processes. Engineering staff, there's a lot of new members there, and they're looking at their review process. And then Cindy is relatively new in our department, so I thought we would bring the three departments together, maybe invite in the different watershed districts, and we could have it in a work session style where we can have a discussion about all of our processes together.
I think that would be really helpful.
Let's say I think that should be, this is just me, but I think that should be a priority over kind of anything else that's on here right now. So I don't know when that can occur, but I think it needs to happen very quickly.
Yeah, let's
Should
see
I
what we can.
Try to set something up like the 5 to 7, kind of before a planning commission.
Yeah, I like that. I don't know what you all
Yeah,
think.
I think that'd work.
Because I think a more informal atmosphere, obviously it's an open meeting, but I'd like to have an environment where we can just kind of ask questions and make sure we understand it. To me, it's important that it be comprehensive. I don't want to do something where we're getting one piece here and one piece there. The whole point of it is to see how it looks from an integrated perspective. So having all of your colleagues here who touch it from different vantage points, I think, is really important in the same room.
And what gets checked and what doesn't, and what are the requirements before.
See, I just thought of another, I don't know if this is too far out, let me know, but we've got that September 25th meeting that was canceled because of the religious holiday. Well, maybe I can't have you guys meet because of that.
Well, we didn't have to meet on a different day.
But maybe that
But we
same
could do
week,
that instead of that meeting.
like the Tuesday before, we could find a room.
Yeah, if it's
Well,
far enough out, we could coordinate.
Again, I
schedules.
would hoping something could happen in July and August. I mean, sooner.
Yeah, that's why maybe that's too far.
I think
out.
that's too late.
That's fine.
I'll coordinate some dates with staff and then maybe send it out to the group.
Commissioner Olson?
So you mentioned that those other departments are looking at revising their policies or process. Will they have those in place or know what they're doing in time for this meeting? Or?
Yeah, that I'm not sure where engineering is with some of their changes.
Okay.
They've
But we can-
indicated a late summer kind of
Okay.
time frame.
But we can at least understand what they're doing and maybe
What they have been doing.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
and
think they generally
lead them a
know
little bit.
the
Okay.
direction they're going.
All right.
I was gonna say, if something's midstream, that's fine, I think, because, we have information or expertise up here that, especially being on the commercial side and how building permits flow and ebb and those things, and just to understand what's happening here would be great. Maybe before it's all completely in place.
Okay, are there any, this may sound like a silly question, but are there any things we should be adding to this? Yeah.
2015?
No, for the 2014. I think you should all start thinking about 2015. It looks like the sign ordinance, the parking regulations, the sustainability, pedestrian friendliness and ordinance, the affordable housing stuff in the PUD.
And the comprehensive plan.
Well, I was just going to say those three items are probably going to have to wait till 2015, and then hopefully we'll get started on the pre-comprehensive plan, but you're right, by 2000, we should, that's something, if we don't finish the pre-comprehensive plan. Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right.
I was just going to say though, as far as the pedestrian friendly, I think we're really covering that under living streets. I think.
Okay.
Connectivity. So it's kind of a minor thing, but I think we are addressing it for the most part. Commissioner Carr, if you hopefully would agree upon that.
Yes.
All right. Oh, and then obviously we're getting off the ground on the Wooddale Valley View small area plan. In your absence, we had a nice presentation at the last meeting, Commissioner Lee, on that, and Commissioner Forrest was here for that. But right. Oh, you have an update. Good. Very good. All right. So anything further on the work plan for now? I do think it's a good idea to start thinking about 2015 keeping in mind that we'll be visiting with the council in mid-September with a proposed work plan, so we should probably have discussions about that in August, which all the more reason to have our visit on the enforcement side before that, because that may suggest some things that we ought to be including in the work plan.
And again, I don't know what people's schedules are in August. A lot of people take vacations, so
Right.
yeah, we should even start looking at that earlier.
Okay. That would be tomorrow.
Next week.
All right, very good. The next item on the agenda is correspondence and petitions. The attendance and council update is in your packet. If there's any inaccuracies, you can check in with Jackie on that. And then we're to chair and commission comments. So for my comments, the one thing I wanted to share is that I received this week a letter from Commissioner Potts resigning from the commission, and I think it was forwarded to all of you as well. He asked that I read that letter, and so I'm going to do that. It was addressed to the city council members but copied to planning commissioners, and the letter is dated June 9th of 2014 and reads as follows. This letter is to notify you of my resignation from the Edina Planning Commission. When I applied for the commission, it seemed an ideal way to provide community service in the city that has been my residence for more than 20 years. It was the chance to be a volunteer and contribute a combination of my passion for the city with my professional training and support of Edina's high quality of life. On the commercial redevelopment front, I think this has gone quite well. Ongoing, underway, or still being planned are numerous projects. These have been carefully vetted against the goals of the comprehensive plan. They will add services, opportunities, and residential density that, in my opinion, will benefit the city for many years to come, residents and businesses alike. Throughout the course of hearing from the design and construction community relative to many such projects, I have been encouraged to learn about the aggressiveness by the city's staff to uphold development and construction regulatory standards. This reputation in the commercial sector is one for city taxpayers to be proud of, as it is only through consistent enforcement of these rules that the quality of life and protection of public and private property is realized. On the residential front, sadly, it is a very different story. Beginning with my service on the Residential Redevelopment Working Group, I heard from many individual citizens of regulatory mistakes, oversights, and errors. At worst, these cause serious property damage and set next-door neighbors against each other. Less worse, but still significant, are the detrimental quality of life impacts. Perhaps most disturbing is the city's lack of willingness to take action and create remedies for these situations, which typically arose due to the city's own passive approach to upholding the code. I continue to hear cases from impacted city residents where city staff appease builders to the detriment of adjacent homeowners. Variances are inadvertently granted and discretion blatantly exercised, which is never in favor of protecting adjoining private property and too often has a negative impact on city infrastructure. I am only one of many citizens who has spoken out about this and no longer held out hope for near-term significant improvement in the process. I have come to realize that the best form of community service I can provide to my fellow taxpayers is no longer a seat on the Planning Commission. My time will be better spent directly assisting city residents who find themselves in the losing end of a dispute with a homeowner or home builder who knows what they can get away with in their interactions with regulatory staff. These residents may not have working knowledge of the redevelopment process. They are pitted against builders who have both intimate knowledge of the process and who know what they can get approved by staff, even if it means skirting aspects of the code. Edina can be much better than this, but to realize that potential will require change. Sincerely, Ken Potts. So for those tuning in midstream, I was reading Ken's letter. It was not my words, but his words. And so he asked me to pass that along, which was his letter of resignation. That has been forwarded. Obviously, Kerry has forwarded that to the City Council, and he will be following up with Deb Mangan and the City Council to pursue the process of filling the vacant seat on the Commission. And we'll keep you up to date as events unfold on that front. So that's all I had, and comments from the chair. Other comments from members? Commissioner Platter.
Yes, so the Living Streets, the pieces for there's a draft out there right now, and it actually goes to council work session on July 1st. If anyone's interested in that, previous to that, we could also share it with this before we go there, maybe possibly at the next meeting. I just have to confirm if that's okay, but the draft is going to council for input. One of the things that I would like to see in there is it a policy or is it in the code? And I'm not sure where that goes quite yet, because there are a lot of things in there that not only apply to as they build streets, but in my mind also apply as we approve projects and when developers come in and things to meet. And these would be, in my mind, pretty good guidelines for them to follow. So more to come on that, but it's working its way through, and hopefully out of that work session we'll have a pretty solid plan after that.
Very good. Commissioner Carr.
And on a light note here, Paul Thompson, who's a member of the Living Streets Advisory Group and also, I believe, part of the Energy and Environment Commission, is leading a walk on the 4th of July. They're working on a banner right now for Living Streets with the new logo that's been adopted, and they'd like to have the theme of the walk is going to be Edina, a deeper shade of green. And so you've got lots of organizations that are trying to collect people from some of the other Edina green organizations, Project Earth, Bike Edina Task Force, Cool Planet, Edina Go Green, Morningside Neighborhood, etc. So if anyone's interested, certainly contact Paul Thompson. I know he'd love to have more people walking with him on the 4th of July.
So at least they've been in spot 75 in the parade. I'm not sure where they're this year, but if anyone's interested, go to that area and feel free to walk.
I've had some experience being near the back of the parade myself. Any other comments? Commissioner Forrest or Commissioner Lee?
Susan Lee and I are working with the working group, I guess it is, for the small area plan for Valley View and Wooddale. Next week, on Wednesday, a week from tonight, there will be a community kickoff meeting for those who are any residents who are interested in attending and finding out more about the process. We are looking for members of a planning team. There's an application online. You can go to the planning department's webpage and link from there. We'll be looking for probably 2 business people and 4 residents to join us on a planning team. The planning team is administrative. It's there to kind of help foster the process and to maximize the public input that we can receive. So it's not that anybody on the planning team is going to have more say in anything that gets out there. The whole point is to get the say of everybody else. So it's that's the role of that, and there is an application, as I said before, online for that. And then an RFI went out for a consultant to help facilitate the public input and the process in general. And there will be a number of public input meetings coming up starting in the fall. And again, the process should wrap up by around January of next year. Do you have anything else to add, Susan?
Terrific. We had a nice presentation at our last meeting and heard a lot about the process, and it's exciting to see it moving forward. It'll be interesting to see who jumps in to be part of that.
And it will be the Pamela Park and Concord neighborhoods are the neighborhoods that are adjacent to that area.
Perfect.
So if anybody's listening.
Very good. Any other comments? Staff comments?
The date of that kickoff meeting will be next Wednesday at 6:30 at the Senior Center.
And that's June 18th. Wednesday, June 18, 6:30, Senior Center. All right, so if you're interested in the future of the Valley View Wooddale Commercial Node, that's the time to show up and participate. Very good. Anything further from you, Carrie?
Well, just
Jordan?
to tease your next meeting a little bit, you do have a pretty sizable agenda, and we do have one sketch plan that this will tie into our comprehensive plan discussion and densities. This is an office residential site where they're proposing a mixed-use project. It's a 6-story building with housing and retail. The plans just came in late this afternoon, so I don't know the density that's being proposed as of yet, but that should be an interesting discussion. It's across the street from the Byerly's project.
All righty, so we have that to look forward to. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. We are adjourned.